Welcome to When Laid Off, Paid Off, Redundancy Success Stories. Coming up in this episode.
It was a big thing to give up a salary for possibly the next 3 years, but as the redundancy taught me, no job is guaranteed, and I had to take the chance on making a difference.
So it needs to come from a positive attitude first of all, and a vision as to what it is you want to achieve.
Welcome to When Laid Off, Paid Off, the show that provides positive stories and lessons to help you find the silver lining if you're struggling with the uncertainty and challenges of redundancy. I'm Liu Batchelor, and I'm a presenter, producer, and TEDx curator. And I'm on a mission to help people share their passion and purpose so that they can find and do the work they love. This episode is brought to you in partnership with Heads Up HR. This episode's story comes from business workspace manager Lisa Highton, who took the scary step to take time out and go to university following her redundancy. As a result, not only did she gain new skills and qualifications, but a whole new level of confidence in herself and her passion. Later in the show, we'll also hear from HR expert Nick Hawley from Heads Up HR. He'll be sharing with us his insight into things to consider if you're exploring retraining options. But first, let's hear Lisa's story.
Hi, I'm Lisa Highton, and I'm here to share my own redundancy success story. Before being made redundant, I was working as a marketing executive at South Kent College. I'd been there since 1996, firstly as a student for 3 years, and at the end of the third year, I was offered the opportunity to take a course telephone advisor position. From here, I went on to work with the admissions teams and helped head up the admissions process across the campuses. I got involved with course advice and started on a route towards careers guidance, and also got heavily involved with student finance. So I was a bit of a crossroads to decide how I wanted to develop my career in that industry. And then came up a brand new role within the marketing department for a trainee assistant. And I had a real love for event management generally, and thought this could be a really good route to go down and to learn more about marketing. I'd only ever touched on it in the courses I'd done, so this seemed like a really good way to go. And then 11 years later, I was still there, having worked my way up to a marketing executive role at senior level. For me, when the option of redundancy came up, it was quite an exciting one, and you'll learn why that is, because it might be quite a surprising way to be. But I actually felt quite fortunate. Our marketing team was quite a small one for the size of the organisation, and there was several sweeps through of redundancies that used to come up, but it mainly affected the teaching staff and other admin areas. So we used to feel quite fortunate that we hadn't been swept up in that, but every time it happened, you'd think, what if it's us? What would I do? What would my options be? So I'd kind of got an idea of what I might do if the opportunity ever came up. My boss had on several occasions said to me, you really deserve to go and get your degree. I'd got all the work experience, but nothing on paper that could prove that. And I felt at the time that if I wanted to get a job in the next bracket up, that I really needed the certificate that said I'd got a degree, and that would really help boost my earning potential and the jobs that were available to me if I wanted to go looking for something new. As a single parent at the time, everything had to be considered. I'd previously been looking into completing a work-based degree, but the college at the time wouldn't support the funding for that. And I'd said on several occasions that I knew the only way I would be able to afford to do a degree is if I'd got redundancy. I needed to be able to fund the time off to do a degree, whether that would be full-time or on a part-time basis. And it was in October 2008 that we received notice that the staff in our team had to be reduced. We had to lose a full-time member of staff. And although there was an immediate fear factor of one of us has got to go, one of us is going to be without a job, it just felt like it was meant to be. My team knew that I would be the one that would want to take it, and they were lucky that actually it was a good choice for me to be the one to go. I felt very wanted, and although my boss had encouraged me to go and seek getting my degree, he found it really hard, along with his boss at the time to agree that I was the one to leave. But it felt right. And at that point, I remember feeling excited about what could be, about what was going to come next. It was an opportunity for me to change my life and the future for me and my son, who was only 4 at the time. It was going to mean big changes. But I just followed the process. I found out about any help I could do. I got back in touch with the university that I'd previously spoken to about degree options. And I knew that I'd be accepted. It was just a matter of signing the papers. So I finished at the college just before Christmas 2009. It was a busy last few weeks in the job, but I wanted to leave all the projects I was working on in a position for the staff to be able to carry on. I knew they'd be 1 member down and that wasn't going to be replaced. So of course I had fears, but they came in waves. Once it was announced I was leaving, I'd have conversations with colleagues and would feel very excited, talking about what I'd planned to do. But then I'd be at home working through paperwork and the finances to make sure that everything was going to be okay. And then I'd feel some panic. And it was just about the change. I knew that, and I've probably learnt more actually since that that's what it was about. It was a big thing to give up a salary for possibly the next 3 years. But as the redundancy taught me, no job is guaranteed, and I had to take the chance on making a difference. I also wondered what I was going to do for the next 6 months, whilst my son had started school and I would be waiting to start uni. When it came to deciding what to do next, I was lucky that I had already thought about it. When the process had started before in other departments, it would always be a discussion we had as to what would we do. My boss at the time had actually started his role with us, having followed redundancy. So it would be a topic of discussion. And because I knew that actually for me, that would be my opportunity to get a degree, it was just about, if I take this redundancy, is the degree going to be possible? So when I previously looked at it, I knew financially things had to be different. So as soon as the redundancy notice came up, I got back in touch with the university to find out what the full-time options would be. I went in thinking business and marketing because that had been my whole working life, and it felt varied and kept it broad for my options in the future. I don't feel that I made a success of my time being self-employed. In fact, that's probably a bit hard on myself, but it never felt like I thought it would. But my job as manager at the workshop is definitely a challenge and helping me bring together all the things I like about business, and I hope that it's going to give me a platform in the future to build on this. I learned a lot about myself during my redundancy process. I learned that I have got more courage than I realised to try something new, especially when you don't know whether it's going to work out or not. It's the not knowing is what's scary, and actually just by trying something, if it doesn't work out, you just have to change it, and it can be changed. I realised I could study at degree level. I did know stuff, and I had things to say that mattered and that people wanted to hear. I actually managed to achieve a first-class honours degree, and I couldn't have done any better. There are not many things that I can say that about, but I actually think, as well as realising that I was capable of things that I didn't think I could do when I was 18, I actually feel for me, my work experience and my time out in the workplace really helped me to achieve that level of degree. I built on my experience and I used that to my full advantage. I learned that I can manage my time, that I can prioritise what's important when I need to. And I think my situation at the time as a single parent made me even more determined to make my decision the right one. I gave up a lot. I made big changes to our lives and I couldn't waste it. The changes also convinced me to give up smoking. A change to routine, a change to finances, some peer pressure from my son, all encouraged this, but it was another big achievement that came from taking the redundancy. I think I was fortunate that I had a plan. I chose to take redundancy. I got to see it as an opportunity, and I can imagine it's very different when it isn't what you want or what you might not be expecting, or that you may not leave you in a position financially where you can make choices. But however you get to the point of redundancy, You should always see it as an opportunity, whether it's to try something new, to train and develop, or to be given some time to reflect and dream. I think a lot of it comes down to mindset, and a lot of this will come from how the situation is handled and the people that you have around you. If you are offered any free advice, take it. I know when I went through mine that I had to have an appointment with a solicitor. It was all part of the process to go through the paperwork. They talked you through everything, but it was great to get their input and support so that I understood everything. I was given time to look at my options and take appointments for a university interview. I've known others that have been offered support with preparing CVs so that they are in a position to seek new employment. And there's lots of those services available. I would just tell anyone to seek advice wherever they can, whether it's people that have been through the process themselves. Look out and seek out the services that are around in your local area. Take the opportunity to find out what there is available to you and make use of it. Check out any free training opportunities to get skills on paper that otherwise you might struggle to be able to prove. Or why not take the opportunity to learn something new? Maybe take some time to think about what you would do if it ever happened to you. How would you manage your situation? How would it impact on you? And what opportunities could redundancy give you? Maybe with ideas, the situation wouldn't be so daunting.
What I love about Lisa's story is how she took what could have been considered as a sacrifice in the short term for the long-term payoff, and ultimately gained so much more confidence in herself as a result. Next up, we're going to hear from HR expert Nick Hawley from Heads Up HR to see what he thinks of Lisa's story and what advice he'd give people in similar situations. Nick, thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you, it's my pleasure. It's good to be with you.
So in Lisa's story, we obviously heard about how she took a big change, changed her circumstances in order to be able to gain that further qualification. But ultimately, she had to rejuggle her whole life, and that's a big old commitment. So what would be some of the things you'd advise people to be aware of and how maybe to put in action those changes they need to do if they are considering going back to kind of university or any further training?
Well, I think you're right. First and foremost, I think it was a major step that Lisa took, and a great step. And you get inspiration from these kinds of stories. I think what's important, and I guess in the case of Lisa, she was very clear about what she was wanting to do and had committed to go and doing a degree course and so on. And turning her life upside down. It's kind of a full-time role, so she's balancing looking after her son, doing some part-time work as well as conducting the study and so on. Massive transformation. So it needs to come from a positive attitude first of all, and a vision as to what it is you want to achieve. You can't go into these things kind of willy-nilly and taking things with a pinch of salt. The commitment you need to understand from day one. And I think that comes down to researching exactly the kind of course that you want to do, what it is you're looking to study, the kind of program it is in terms of learning style and so on, whether it's all classroom based or whether you've got interactive workshops, webinars and that kind of thing. But really making sure that whatever it is you're going to be doing, you want to do. One thing I would say is don't do qualifications just for the sake of qualifications. A lot of people think I need to get the qualification in order to, and then find that they don't enjoy it, they don't particularly get inspired by it and so on. So the time and effort that you put into researching the program and making it absolutely sure that's what you want to do, particularly with the financial commitment that goes with it, you don't want to find out halfway through that this isn't for you.
Absolutely. And is there anything people can do to kind of maybe try a little bit of, say they want to go in a different direction, go into a different sector, before they make that commitment? You mentioned about obviously researching the type of course and kind of, the type of qualification. But I guess equally, if you're going into a new sector, you don't necessarily know if you're going to like that new career if you've not done it before. Is there any opportunities for people to try elements of it? But ultimately, if you don't have the qualification, it can be hard to do that. Is there anything people can do?
My suggestion is volunteering. You know, if you want to work with charities, or if you want to get into a completely different sector, you know, even back in the private sector or the public sector and so on, I'd be very surprised if on the back of you offering to volunteer to get involved in projects or work and so on, that they'd turn around and say no. So I think volunteering, it doesn't make any commitment. Clearly, you don't get any pay out of that, but you're starting to get a taster for the kind of work that you really want to be doing.
I really like that. Yeah, really, really good, because you may find that it's not actually what you thought it was, and you've saved yourself 3 years and a lot of money, I guess, if it's university, or you may find a more specific niche. Brilliant. So also with Lisa, one of the big things that stood out for me was this idea of, she took on the part-time work, but it wasn't just kind of about having the financial side of that part-time work. It was also for her an opportunity to explore and experiment, and resulted in her really refining and working out what she really loved. What would your advice be for people to, I mean, you've already mentioned the volunteering, but is there anything else you'd add in terms of how we can get to explore and experiment a bit more with our career, but ultimately, you know, knowing that we can't always dip in and out and do one day here, one day there? Is there anything we can do?
Well, I think, I'm kind of involved in career coaching, and one of the things that there's a kind of a model that I use, which is, I call it the 3 R's. And that's, first of all, reflecting where you're at right now in terms of your career, what's got you to where you are, what are the skills, what are the values, what are the things that you like doing. I work on the premise, this is underpinned by some theoretical work I'm doing with a psychologist called Dan Harrison, that if 75% of your work is something you enjoy, you'll enjoy doing more of it, and so on. So actually kind of reflecting on the things that really make you tick creates the kind of vision of your transferable skills and competencies, as you then start to think about the second R, which is reframing. So taking those kind of skills, values, behaviors that you've developed so far in your career, how can you reframe those in a different way to think about what does come next? And I use a particular canvas to help people think that through. It's a good process, and once you've kind of got that vision in place, you then start to respond, which is the third R, and then put the action plan in place to take you towards your new career.
Brilliant. Sounds good. And is there anything else that particularly stood out for you in kind of Lisa's story? We've obviously mentioned about the that commitment element and that opportunity to really focus, like you said, reflect, reframe. Anything else that stands out for you that you think people could benefit from?
I think just in Lisa's case, it's just an absolute determination and a vision to go ahead, take a risk. It's a calculated risk, but be resilient and be determined in delivering what it is you set out to do. You can't go into these things lightly. You can't go into it willy-nilly, wishy-washy. You have to have a passion, you have to have that vision, you have to have a dedication and determination. I always say the only place that work comes before success is in the success becomes before work is in the dictionary, and it's very true.
Very nice. Great thing to kind of leave on. And yeah, like you said, a really kind of a story of dedication and a lot of kind of success and learning courage, I think, by the end of Lisa's story, wasn't it? So it's really great to see. That was Nick Hawley from Heads Up HR. For more tips, advice and support, including information about his redundancy support programme, check out headsuphr.co.uk. Thank you for watching When Laid Off, Paid Off, Redundancy Success Stories. I hope you found some inspiration and hope from this episode. I'll see you next time.